Hello everyone, back into today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days, or today's second video, which will take us to around the 8th of February, so into the end of the first week of the final month of winter 2019-2020. We'll have a look at what's happening in the stratosphere. Been talking about that quite a bit in videos just lately, and we'll have a look at the chance of a cold snap from the north next week. Have to tell you that the chance of that cold snap has receded with model output over the past few days, so we did say yesterday, but it's only a possibility. There are certainly no guarantees about it, and certainly the GFS is in the process of very much backtracking on that cold snap for next week. The ECM is still going for it, but overall, I think we're probably going to struggle to get a cold snap from the north next week. We may get a bit of a ridge, bringing a few frosty nights maybe around the middle of next week, but I think that proper northerly from the Arctic, the chances of that are lowering by the minute within model output, it would seem. Anyway, more about all of that in a moment. Just say the 5-day forecast has been released, so it could be turning very much milder and a lot more unsettled as well. In the next 5 days, there is going to be more bands of rain coming in across the country, but temperatures will be a lot milder than they have been for the last couple of days. So this very mild January is going to end on a really mild note. Have a look at the 5-day forecast and see what's going on there. Before I do anything else, I'll say a big thank you to our latest PayPal donor. We've had a new donation through PayPal for Gasworthy. Now this person wants to stay anonymous, which is absolutely fine. If you would rather stay anonymous when you give your donations to Gasworthy, that's perfectly fine. Just let us know when you make your donations. So all I'll say is a big thank you to Anonymous. You know who you are. I've told you that we'll be giving you this mention at the start of this video, so you know who you are, I know who you are, and a big thank you to Anonymous for their donation, or for your donation. Thank you so much for helping to support Gasworthy's. If you would like to become a donor for Gasworthy's, all you need to do is come to Gasworthy's PayPal page. You sign into your PayPal account, and you can donate whatever amount of money you would like to Gasworthy's to help us pay for the website and keep content online. By doing that, you become a donor for Gasworthy's, and we'll give you a mention in the videos, whether that be anonymously or whether that to be in terms of giving you a mention for your name, or maybe you want a mention for your business or website. You might want a mention of somebody else, perhaps a dedication for somebody else, or a shout out, or a happy birthday message. Somebody else, absolutely fine. However you want that message, that's perfectly fine, so we're always happy to do that. So a big thank you to all of our donors, and a special thank you to Anonymous for becoming our latest donor. There is, of course, also Patreon, so if you would like to become a patron of the Gasworthy's, we need you to come to Gasworthy's Patreon page. We've got 64 patrons at the moment, so hello, and a big thank you to our 64 patrons. If you would like to give an ongoing monthly donation to Gasworthy's via Patreon, we need you to come to the Patreon page, you sign up for a Patreon account, assuming you don't already have one, and then you can give an ongoing monthly donation to Gasworthy's. It can be anything from $1 a month upwards. You pool in with all of the other patrons, and that's absolutely great, and thank you so much to all of our patrons for doing that for Gasworthy. So whether you do it through Patreon, whether you do it through PayPal, it's so kind and generous of all of you to help us pay for our website. So a big thank you to all of you for doing that for Gasworthy's, and of course a special thank you to Anonymous for becoming our latest donor. Thank you so much, Anonymous, for doing that. Right, we're going to start off in the stratosphere then. So this is how temperatures are currently looking at 10 HPA over the Arctic and the North Pole. We're at meteosil.fr, and this is the latest GFS 6 o'clock run. So these blue colours, of course, where we've got these cold temperatures at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole. We are getting a stratospheric warming, not a southern stratospheric warming yet, but we are getting a stratospheric warming beginning over Siberia at the moment with these green and yellow colours. We're looking to lift the temperature up by around 40, 50, 60 degrees in a couple of days, and push that into the Arctic and North Pole and obliterate these blue colours, which is what can happen when these southern stratospheric warming events get going. You can see a complete obliteration of those blue colours, which is kind of like the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere. Let's run through, see what happens on this latest GFS run. So this warming over Siberia intensifies, comes up just short of what would be classified as a sudden stratospheric warming, I think, but it is a very significant warming of the stratosphere over Siberia and beginning to move out towards the Canadian side of the Arctic as well. That starts to cause a displacement of the polar vortex at its roots. These blue curves are pushed over onto our side of the Arctic, so kind of like over towards Greenland, I mean down into the North Atlantic, which is just there, and then Northern Europe, which is just there. So we call this a displacement event. These yellow and green colours are displacing the polar vortex at its roots over towards our side, Atlantic and European side, if you like, of the Arctic. This is still not a sudden stratospheric warming, though, and we are still not seeing an obliteration of the polar vortex at its roots. It's just being sort of pushed around and displaced from its normal position, which is kind of over top of Greenland and the North Pole itself. That takes us up to the 6th of February. Now, in recent days, we've been talking about a secondary warming, perhaps getting going through the second week of January. Across Siberia, and that one possibly becomes a sudden stratospheric one. That's been what the GFS, anyway, has been flirting with in the last day or so. Let's see what it does with this GFS run. So we're up the 6th of February, and we've got this displacement taking place with the yellow and green colours moving in towards Canada and northern parts of Greenland. So we run through and we see that first warming, as expected, kind of like fizzles out by the time you get through to the 9th, 10th. So the first warming is beginning to ease away. These blue colours, that's the cold temperature at 10 HPS, starting to push back in towards the Arctic, starting to take up their normal position, if you like. Are we going to get a secondary warming kicking off over Siberia? Well, there we are, up to the 12th, 13th. There is a little, very slight warming beginning to occur over southern parts of Russia, but this is nowhere near as extensive as we've been seeing in some of the GFS runs lately. So yes, a bit of a secondary warming occurs as we get towards the middle of February. This is 14th of February as far as we can go today with a GFS run. A little secondary warming does occur, but nowhere near the level of the sun stratospheric warming. You notice these blue colours eventually get themselves back into sort of pole position over the Arctic and over the North Pole. Once again, after that displacement around the 6th of February over towards the Atlantic and European side of the Arctic, they sort of push back again in towards the top of the pole once again. So at the moment, still no sign of a killer blow for this polar vortex. It goes on, and as long as this polar vortex remains powerful and strong over the Arctic and over North Pole, we're going to struggle to generate anything more than cold snaps, I think, this winter, because the polar vortex is just so powerful this winter. And yesterday and the day before, it did look as though we might get that secondary warming kicking off over Siberia. We still might do. Remember, this is all extended range stuff. As I explained yesterday, we won't take seriously a precipitation forecast, for example, or a temperature forecast, surface temperature forecast at 384 hours away, over 2 weeks away. So we can't necessarily take seriously what the GFS is showing in terms of its stratospheric forecast either. But today it's definitely backed away from that idea of a secondary warming that could have reached the level of a sudden stratospheric warming. So we shall keep looking, we shall keep observing what's going on over the stratosphere. At some point this polar vortex has got to start weakening, but at the moment, other than the displacement taking place there around the 5th, 6th of February, there's no sign of any real changes, I don't think, to the polar vortex. It's going to take, I think, a sudden stratospheric warming to really knock it on the head, and at the moment we're struggling to generate a genuine sudden stratospheric warming, but we shall keep looking. This is how the ECMWF is forecasting things in terms of 10 HPA. So this is from the University of Berlin. This is from last night's ECM run. So this is at 10 HPA in the stratosphere for the 1st of February. And we can see that on the 1st of February, we've still got these blue colours centred over the top of the North Pole. The North Pole itself is where this X is, just here. We have got this first warming of the stratosphere over Siberia, of course. So that is taking place now, starting now, and is going to intensify over Siberia as we come to the end of January and into the beginning of February. As we go through into the sort of extended range with the ECM, which gets us to the 7th of February, that's how we look. So yes, the warming has moved out of Siberia, gone over towards the Canadian side of the Arctic. That's causing this displacement. So GFS and ECM are in agreement with this first warming of the stratosphere, falling just short of a sudden stratospheric warming, but enough to cause a displacement of the polar vortex at its roots, with these blue curves being pushed over to the Greenland and Atlantic and European side of the Arctic. So that's 2 weeks away. That's 7th of February at 10 HP. We can't say whether the ECM is picking up on the idea of a secondary warming starting off around here and then moving in that direction. So at the moment, it's just a case of wait and see what the ECM does. Going a bit low down to 30 HPA, the ECM shows a very cold stratospheric temperature at 30 HPA. This is close to the troposphere, of course. Very cold stratospheric temperature on the 1st of February over the Arctic and the pole. And by the time you get through to the 7th of February, again, a bit of a warming appearing, particularly over the Canadian side of the Arctic. That's coming down from 10 HPA, I think, but still pretty cold over the North Pole itself at 30 HPA. If we go right up to the very top of the stratosphere, though, it does look quite dramatic there. We have got a very dramatic warming occurring right at the very top of the stratosphere at 1 HPA by the 7th of February, day 10. So we've seen this a couple of times this winter, and of course 1 HPA, that's right at the very, very top of the stratosphere, almost as far as you can go to still be within the stratospheric level of the atmosphere. Beyond that, you're sort of starting to move off up towards space, really. So this is as far as you can go, and it's so far up, but it doesn't have any direct impacts on the troposphere, on what the weather is going to do. That's much, much lower down than 1 HPA. So this has no impact directly on the weather and on the troposphere, but sometimes, we've seen this a couple of times this winter and it hasn't come to anything, but sometimes these very dramatic warmings at 1 HPA, right at the very top of the stratosphere, sometimes they can be a precursor to a sudden stratospheric warming occurring at 10 HPA, but eventually at 30 HPA. So that might be the start of a sudden stratospheric warming later in February, but we have seen this a couple of times this winter. We've had a very dramatic warming at 1 HPA. It had no impact lower down at the level of the stratosphere we're interested in, which is 10 to 30 HPA, and certainly no impact on the troposphere. So we should just wait and see. That it is a very dramatic warming at 1 HPA at the very top of the stratosphere by 7th of February. So we shall see whether that could be a precursor to a sudden stratospheric warming at 10 HPA. Time will tell. So these are how the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles are looking in the next couple of weeks. We're looking at Edinburgh today. So the red line is 30-year upper air temperature average for Edinburgh. As I said at the start of the video, the GFS is backtracking big time on this chance of a cold snap next week. So overall, this ensemble looks very mild. The dates are on the bottom of the chart. Overall, we see a lot of signs of zonality, where we have got these warmer and cooler and warmer and cooler and warmer and cooler sectors alternating with one another. So this tells us we're going back into an unsettled phase of weather, with warm fronts and cold fronts changing the air mass, but of course averaging it all out, we generally come out quite a bit milder than average with zonality in winter. Now there are a few GFS ensemble members that are still going for a cold snap next week. It's sometime around the 4th to the 6th or 7th of February in that period. We do see about 4 or 5 members of the GFS ensembles that are still going for probably quite a brief, but still going for quite a potent cold snap through the middle part of next week. However, they're in the minority, and you see that most ensemble members are keeping things mild through that middle phase of next week, or certainly keeping the zonal train going, if you like. Maybe with cold sectors coming through, yes, but certainly keeping things quite unsettled. Then into the second week of February, this point just here, again, we see most of these ensembles. There's a lot of up and down going on, a lot of scatter, which I think is indicative of zonality, but overall, looks like the GFS ensembles today are quite keen to keep things pretty mild right way through to the middle part of February, with further rain to come, further precipitation spikes pretty much from beginning to end. It's not dramatically wet, but certainly looks quite changeable. There will be bands of rain pushing through and showers at times as well. Temperature anomalies from the 29th of January to the 6th of February are above average. It's going to be a mild average week coming up, as we've said, pretty much every single day through this winter, where we've been looking at these anomaly maps. So yes, another day where we're saying above average temperatures in weekend in terms of temperature anomaly. Precipitation anomalies wetter than average to the north, near normal to a bit drier than average further south. Over in America, you remember a couple of weeks ago, America was being suggested to have a very cold February. Well, look at this. Temperature anomalies from the 29th of January to the 6th of February are mild through most northern, central and eastern parts of America. So they've had a very mild winter too. It's not one of those winters where we can say all the cold has been plunging into eastern America and it's blown up the jet stream and kept us mild. It's not been that sort of winter at all, because both sides of the Atlantic have generally been on the mild side this winter, and this goes on for another week from the 29th of January, 6th of February. Most northern and eastern parts of the states anyway are mild enough. It is colder out on the western side of the states, as it has been generally quite regularly through this winter. It remains pretty cold over towards the Pacific side of America, but through the central and midwestern states and then over towards the Atlantic side of America, it remains milder than average in the week ahead. Precipitation anomalies for America looking drier than average in many states. It's a bit wetter up around here, but overall it's quite a dry week coming up for much of America, so presumably there's quite a lot of ridging going on through many central and southern states anyway. Right, back to home, and this is how the GFS is looking for Saturday. First day of February, of course, last day of this winter, if we can call it a winter. And we see that we've got a weather system coming in across the country. So Saturday, you're actually going to have a bit of a weather window. There will be some showery rain or maybe hailstorm in the north on Saturday morning, but then we build up a slight ridge of high pressure, turn things drier through much of Saturday. However, not for long. The next low is coming back in Saturday night, bringing more rain, very mild temperatures into the early part of next week, remains unsettled. Now, this is the middle of next week. This is when yesterday the GFS was indicating we might get a Toppler northerly. We can see what's gone wrong. We are not taking the high pressure far enough north. We're keeping this high, as it's been pretty much out the whole winter, really, keeping this high pressure centred again over France, Spain and Portugal. As long as you've got the high pressure down there, you're going to struggle to bring down much of cold weather, because the jet stream will just roll in over top, especially when you've got such a powerful Atlantic and polar vortex. So to get this cold snap, as I explained yesterday, we've got to get the high pressure further north and west and centre it somewhere to the northwest of Scotland. And if we do that, if we get the high pressure centred up here, then at least for a day or two we'll be able to pull down some northerly winds. Of course, it's only a Toppler because we've got all of this low pressure sitting to the south of Greenland just here. So any ridge is not going to last more than a couple of days, and then the low pressure and the jet stream will push it south, and that's why we call it a Toppler, because the high pressure that's near Iceland will topple over the UK, as I explained in yesterday's video. So anyway, we're not getting the Toppler northerly on this latest GFS run. We do build up a slight little transient ridge around middle of next week that might pull off the frost But you can see the low pressure is waiting winds, and into second half next week we're back into those west-southwesterlies once again up to day 10. Look at that, very mild southwesterly winds, and if anything the polar vortex is really blowing up again to the south of Greenland ice, and that looks potentially very strong. Whenever the pinks and purples turn up in this area south of Greenland and near Iceland, you can think that we're probably going to get a battering. So that looks a bit ominous, and as we go to the extended range with this GFS run, the Atlantic just keeps powering through. We finish up on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, with a Valentine's Day storm there. Look at that, severe gales battering the country from that area of low pressure. The only saving grace is that it's over 2 weeks away, so it's unlikely to verify, but it's sort of the idea that even well into February we can expect these westerlies to continue probably. And the GEM looks like that. Now, yesterday, the GEM was never, throughout this period, really, the GFS has never been particularly keen on a Toppler for next week. So if this cold snap has gone down the tubes, then it'll be hats off to the GEM, the Canadian model, because it never went for it. And actually, I did see some stats a couple of days ago, somewhere, probably on Twitter, saying that the GEM has now overtaken the GFS in terms of being in terms of reliability. So, of course, the mighty ECM is the most reliable of these mods and has been for years and years and years and years. Then I think it's followed by the UK Met, then normally by the GFS, and then the GEM in four plate. But I did see the other day that the GEM has overtaken the GFS. So if we don't get this cold snap next week, it'll be hats off to the GM because it never went for it. This is Saturday, and low pressure is to the north of Scotland, so Saturday is likely to start a bit showery in the north, and then it will turn drier. Here comes another push of very mild winds from southwest on Sunday. That takes us through to the early part of next week, looking mild and unsettled. Middle of next week, again, we're not getting that high pressure far enough north to pull off this Toppler northerly. So the GM just keeps these westerlies wafting in. Probably don't even get a frost with the GM through the middle of next week. And then into more extended range, setting up a very mild, almost spring-like pattern, really. As far as we can go today, which is the 8th of February, high pressure then is centred over Germany, bringing up winds from the south and southwest, as you have done on and off throughout this winter. That probably lifts temperatures into the mid-teens Celsius. And of course, with the sun getting ever stronger now, that would probably feel quite spring-like. Actually, day by day, the sun in February will get rapidly stronger. And then we've got the ECMWF, of course, bringing in these westerly winds on Saturday. A little transient resettle things down later Saturday, but not for long. Here comes the next low through the early part of next week. We're back to wet weather and also quite mild temperatures. Now notice with the ECM, the high pressure is further away from us as we go into the middle of next week. So the ECM is still going to this normally, whether this is the midnight ECM run, whether this will still be here when we get the midday run, we shall have to wait and see. That'll be around, that'll be between 6 and 7 o'clock tonight. But as of midnight today, or midnight last night, I suppose, the ECM is still going for this northerly. You see how it's doing it. It's taking this high pressure much further to the west and to the northwest, with the low pressure sinking through northern Europe, and that allows the wind to turn into the north. It will only be a Toppler northerly because we've got all of this low pressure on this side of the ridge, so the ridge won't be able to be sustained for long, but still the ECM is going for that cold snap from the north through the middle of next week. However, by day 10 you see how the ridge is toppling and the mild areas begin to roll in over the top. So if we go any further than that, we will probably infiltrate a milder west-southwesterly, but the ECM is still seeing the chance of this cold snap from the north, and we know that within the GFS ensembles there are still a few of these ensemble members that are going for this cold snap as well, so it's not totally off the cards that we might get a cold snap next week. But generally, particularly the GFS, its ensemble has done a big backtrack on this northerly wind next week. This is the precipitation forecast based on that ECM run from meteo.com. So for today, we've got rain with some hail snow coming into the northern part of the country. Into tomorrow, and gradually things are getting more unsettled. It's not really until Friday that we bring the first band of rain across the country. That will become light and patchy, though, as it moves across the country. And then Sunday, we see this band of heavy rain move northwards. Quite cold out on the northern edge of that low pressure, so there may be a little bit of hail snow mixed in, but it'll quickly turn back to rain as we bring up very mild winds from the southwest once again. Just a suggestion of a little bit of winteriness there on the 4th of February, that's next Tuesday, as the low pressure cleared away. Remember, the ECM is still going for this northerly, so the middle of next week is colder than the GM and the GFS, and the winds are in from the north through the middle of next week, which brings snow showers into northern Scotland, and wintry showers run down both the west and the east coast. Proper snow showers coming down the east coast with that northerly wind. It is a very cold northerly that the ECM is going for. I just don't think it'll be there when the ECM updates this evening. But we shall see then. As we get up towards day 10, well, of course, we're under the high pressure, but gradually it is sinking away to the south. So we're beginning to pull milder winds from the west-southwest into the west of Scotland by day 10, which is the 8th of February. These are the options on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which of course, as I just said, is the 8th of February. So 14 members of the ECM ensembles have low pressure out to the northwest at the end of the first week of February, with high pressure centred pretty much over top of the country. So at very least, they're going to be mostly dry and quite cold and frosty. 13 have the high pressure toppling further southwards, with low pressure up to the north there, bringing in mild air from off the Atlantic. 11, including the operational run, has a high pressure toppling, yes, but still just about out to our northwest, so quite chilly with that one. Another 8 with high pressure centred over and just to the east. That's going to be dry and frosty. And then 5 with high pressure sort of sinking away to the southwest, introducing milder air from off the Atlantic. The frostiest, the coldest scenarios at day 10 with that are the 14 just there, the 11 just there, and then the 8 just there. So the ECM ensembles, possibly still quite bullish on this northerly, actually, unlike the GFS, which has backed off it quite a bit. In fact, if we go back a few days to like the 5th of February, we can see that 27 members of the ECM ensembles have the high pressure out to the west, the low pressure to the east. So they're pulling down that northerly wind. 13, again, with high pressure out to the west, low pressure to the east. A little bit more of a northwesterly, but still would be quite cold. And then 11, with the high pressure just to the west of Ireland, more of a west-northwesterly. And most cold air with that is kept away from us on the periphery of it with those 11. So the ECM ensembles are actually still quite bullish for this northerly through the middle of next week. It's the GFS and its ensemble was backed off a lot, so that's quite strange. And we will see tonight what the ECM is forecasting in terms of this northerly snap next week. In 2 weeks' time, these options we got from ECM ensembles is the 13th of February. By then, it looks like most ensemble members take us back into the milder westerly. So 19 members of the ECM ensembles have the winds in from the west and look mild, wet and windy. 9 have a Scandinavian high, though. These ones just here, they are placing us in an easterly wind, so they're quite cold. Another 9 with high pressure sort of over France and the Low Countries, low pressure out to the northwest, they're putting up very mild southwesterlies. 7 with low pressure barrelling in from off the Atlantic, they're very mild and wet. And then 7 with high pressure kind of centred over or just to the west of us, possibly still hanging on some frost with those. So bit of uncertainty as we get through to the middle of February, but the ECM ensemble is probably favouring a return of milder and more unsettled weather by the middle of February, but with a minority possibility of a Scandinavian high. Finally, CFS V2, these are 500 millibar heights, bring down to week periods. The first week period takes from 29th of January to the 4th of February. The coming week, low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south. We continue to bring in the mild west-southwest. Will the CFS see a cold snap in week 2? No, it doesn't. There's no surprises there. From the 5th to the 11th of February, the CFS has low pressure to the north, high pressure to the west-southwest, and the westerlies go on as we go through to week 3. This is how we look. It's the 12th to the 18th of February. Low pressure remains to the northwest, high pressure remains to the south, and we continue bringing in those west to southwesterly winds. And finally in week 4, bit of a change in week 4. It's the 19th to 25th of February. The low pressure sort of stalling around the south of Greenland, heights rising to our east and northeast. So with that, again, wind direction is very critical. That could be very spring-like. That could be dragging up the wind from like the south to southeast. If it is, at the end of February, as we saw what happened last year, we had a similar pattern towards late February, you can get some remarkable warmth with temperatures pushing into the upper teens or even below 20s if the wind is coming up from like North Africa. Late in February with the sun getting so powerful. If the wind happened to be east of south, so if it was coming more from that direction, then of course that could be colder. But for that to happen, you'd have to take the low pressure and the jet stream down in that direction, and there's not much sign of that. So I would suggest that's probably just a taste of spring-like weather in week 4. But it is a bit of a change from the unsettled weather in weeks 1, 2 and 3. Right, that's brought you up to date with everything. Hope you found the video interesting and informative. Tomorrow we'll have another week to 10-day video update to bring you up to date with all of the latest developments. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.